Hello everybody, and welcome to the first IoT session in the AWS Summit Online. My name is Boaz Ziniman. I'm a Principal Developer Advocate from Tel Aviv, Israel, and I'm going to be your host in this session and in the next IoT session that's going to follow this one. This session will talk about transforming tomorrow's industries with AWS IoT. And this is a basic introduction session for IoT, and we talk about basic concepts of IoT, how it can change industries, and show you a few examples of our customers that are doing amazing things with IoT. So let's start. And imagine for a second that you will have the ability to know the state of everything, every device out there, every sensor, and could take this data, analyze and understand it. If you had this ability, which business problems are you going to solve? How are you going to apply this knowledge, this information to your exact business needs? So today we have customers that solving huge enterprise challenges with data. Data coming from devices, from IoT devices, from sensors. We see it in manufacturing, and we see it in energy management, and in medical devices, and connected cars, and agriculture, and many, many more use cases. And when you're applying those capabilities and using this data, you can actually change a lot of your business outcomes. And we see customers taking this data and applying it to allow them to increase their revenue. And in doing that, by introducing new business models based on additional features that they provide for their customers. They improve their products over time. It's the same hardware, but because they connect to the hardware and the hardware is constantly getting more updates, software updates, they can change this hardware and allow it to give more capabilities to customers. Think for a second about smart speakers like Sonos. Sonos constantly update their speakers, adding more features, more capability, new streaming services, and so on. And this is how you take the same hardware and improve it with connectivity. And of course, when you are connected to your customers and getting the data from them, you can better understand them. You can analyze this data, you can understand exactly what your customers are using, what they are looking for, and improve the product, which will eventually affect your revenue. On the other side, there is the operational efficiency. Customers are using this data to increase efficiency in their manufacturing, in their working processes. They're taking better decisions that are based on data, and this is a slow but very steady process of moving to be a data-driven company and making sure that every decision you're making can be backed up by real data, and that will eventually affect your operational efficiency. So we have many different customers today that are already using IoT and changing the way they operate. You can find your customers from retail and from media and manufacturing and automotive and many, many others. And all those customers are investing a lot to be able to provide better services to their customers and better solutions by taking this data, analyzing it, and using it with AWS IoT. And the question is, how do you digital transform your organization? How can you do the next step to start using this data to integrate it into your processes? And I want to talk a bit about this process of digital transformation and how it looks like in many of our customers. So usually it starts with the most basic things. You're changing what you build. You're adding new capabilities to your devices, to your machines, to your services, and you invest in making them connected products, allowing them to send information, to receive information, and to evolve the experience of your users. Then those products will be able to improve with time because they are becoming connected products. And they will allow you to add more value and additional services to your customers. So this is usually the first stage. Then you're moving to the next stage when you change the way you operate. And you can do that when you start to collect this data and start to analyze and understand the meaning of each one of these data points. And it will allow you to put this data into operative and efficient dashboards that your employees can use analyze, understand, make decisions. You can start doing predictive maintenance instead of being only reactive. So you know when something is going to break based on this data and fix it before it will actually break. You can change your supply chain because now it's based on data, and you can move to have smart factories and manufacturing. And once again, this will change the way your day-to-day operation looks like. Last but not least, changing your market economics. When you are able to connect everything together, you will be able to provide new business models. You will be able to move from services, from purchases to services or subscription-based services. So we used to buy tires and pay for the tire, and it doesn't matter how much I drive, I will pay the same price. Now you can basically buy a tire based on the amount of kilometers you're going to use this tire, basically pay for what you use exactly. And this is a complete new service model for a traditional industry. And of course, when you have this data, you can start offering services that are based on data. This is all great, and a lot of customers are in the middle of this journey or already finish it. But there are a lot of challenges that you should take into account, and it's not a simple process and it's not a simple task. And there are a few factors that are making it a bit challenging. First of all, adding smart capabilities to physical devices, existing physical devices. Some of them can be very old devices, what we called brownfield, is challenging. Building something from scratch, building a new smart device, it's relatively easy. But try to think, how do you add these capabilities to an oil rig that it's been running for 20 years, or for a manufacturing line that did not change for a decade? And this is one of the biggest challenges. How do you add those capabilities for those devices? There are some ways to do it easily, using microcontrollers, adding devices on top of existing devices and so on, but still, this is a big challenge. Another big challenge is security and privacy. You're starting to collect a lot of data, and you need to make sure that you keep this data safe. You need to make sure that if you're collecting data from your customers, you are able to make sure that this data is stored correctly, and you should take this into account. How do you encrypt everything? How do you encrypt the communication? Once again, a big challenge. Then, not all organizations were data-driven born, and it takes time, and it takes a change in culture, and cultural changes can be very, very long. To move an organization to be a data-driven organization is a process that you need to invest in. It won't happen overnight, and you should take this into account. And in many cases, the ROI on those processes take time, and sometimes a lot of time. It can be months, it can be even years. So you have to have the vision where you want to get to, and patience before getting into those processes. Last but not least, many of those industries are very traditional ones, and once again, it's hard to change traditional industries and traditional approaches, and as I said before, cultural changes take time, so you should be patient. If we're taking just one of the processes of changing how you operate and diving a bit deeper into this process, we can see some real challenges related specifically to that. So there are a lot of companies, traditional industries that already collect a lot of data. Manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, agriculture, and many, many others collect a lot of data. But usually this data is collected on premises, at the field. And in most cases, nobody is using this data. Still, there's a lot of pressure on those companies to move forward and to move forward fast, introduce things like AI and machine learning, analytics on top of this data. But in most cases, they never collect this data beyond the endpoint, the single factory, the single division. And if you are not able to collect all your information across assets, plants, divisions, factories, and so on, you won't be able to gain the knowledge out of this data. And you need to make sure that you can move forward by implementing very basic steps. So we already know that there is a lot of data that is being collected, but it's stuck somewhere. And it can be stuck in legacy systems, it can be stuck in legacy protocols. And still, companies are rushing into solutions like machine learning And they won't be able to get the knowledge that they're looking for without putting the basic building blocks in place. So you have to start with collecting the data. You have to start with bringing the data from all your resources into a single place in the cloud, then being able to present this data to others so they will understand what data they have and what they can work with. And then when you have these capabilities, when you build the basic infrastructure, then you can start implementing advanced technologies like machine learning, like analytics, and that should be something that you plan, and that should be something that you invest in. The basic infrastructure for something like that would look similar to this slide. You store your data inside a data lake on AWS. It's coming from different sources in the field, on premises, from real-time IoT sensors, and any source of data that you can think of. Your website is going to write here, and your customer data and your sales and everything is going to sit in one place. When you have all the data in one location, then you can actually go and start implementing machine learning services, analytics, and many, many others. And here's a great example of one of our partners. Pentasoft from Spain is a company that creates solutions for connected retailers, and they are taking AWS IoT and other AWS services and provide a service, a software that you can install in your gas station, and energy retailers are using it today to improve the efficiency of their business, to collect the data, to store it correctly, and then analyze it. And it allows them to grow basically with no limits and respond effectively for every change that is happening. And we see some implementation of this system across gas stations in Spain and other places in Europe. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Take the data, store it, analyze it, make it simple for companies to integrate, because there are protocols, for example, for gas stations, and this system can tap on top of those protocols without changing the pumps themselves and everything that is running this business, but just adding another smart layer on top of it. So how do you do that? Which services can you use from AWS to start your IoT journey and start changing your industry? So let's talk a bit about what features and what are the fundamentals of AWS IoT. Before we do that, you have to remember that IoT solutions are complex and multidimensional, and in many cases you have to combine a lot of different technologies. It starts with onboarding and provisioning your devices and making sure that you give the devices the right credentials, and you build them, manufacture them, connect them to your current network. Then there is the connectivity and infrastructure. Connected devices need connectivity. So if it's Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or any other connectivity technology, you have to take this into account. You have to understand, how do you bring this connectivity to the field? How do you make sure your devices are actually connected? On top of it, when you get the data, you need to analyze and visualize this data and act upon this data. This is another component you should take into account. Connecting your devices to applications, and sometimes to legacy applications, is another very big challenge. And this will allow you to engage with those devices. And without this connectivity, you will get a lot of data, but your end users, your employees at the field, won't be able to use it. So this is another component you should take into account. Last but not least, change management. You need to make sure that this is something that is being managed, and you can see the changes happening in each stage. That will help you for this shift in culture, and this is another very important part of every IoT solution. When we're looking at the AWS IoT architecture, we're basically looking at 3 layers. We're starting with the basic layer of device software, and this is a layer that will allow you to build devices that operate at the edge with different software components. This is going to be the focus of my next session. So if you're interested in device software and IoT at the edge, please make sure you join me for the next session. The second layer is connectivity and control services. That will allow you to control and manage your devices in a secure manner and connect them to the cloud in different ways. And on top of that, there is the analytics services that will take this data, analyze it, and allow you to take the appropriate action based on this information. So when you combine all of this together, you basically being able to get this intelligence and outcomes from your IoT projects. So this session is going to focus on connectivity and control services, and we're going to talk a lot about how can I connect, manage, and secure my devices at scale. So to do that, we provide you a service called AWS IoT Core. It's actually not a service, it's a collection of several services, but they are under the umbrella of AWS IoT Core. And those services will allow you to do the basic connectivity of your devices to the cloud and take the basic actions. It will allow you to do the actual connectivity, of course, securely, and make sure that you can run at any scale. So this solution can be for just a handful of devices. It can be for a million devices. And I'm going to show you an example of one of our customers doing exactly that in a few minutes. Then you can take this information, you can route it, process it, and decide what to do with this information, a very important part of AWS IoT Core. You have the ability and tools to connect your applications, new or legacy applications, to your devices. And last but not least, and one of the biggest advantages of AWS IoT Core, is the ability to connect AWS IoT Core to more than 185 different AWS services. Services for analytics, for development, for processes, for data store, and many, many other things. So taking this data from your IoT platform somewhere else on the AWS platform is a huge advantage. You should take this into account. So which components do we have at AWS IoT Core? It starts with identity services, and identity services are managing everything related to the identity of your devices and their ability to connect to the cloud. It will include certificates and mutual authentication, because you need to make sure that the device that is connecting to your cloud account is actually allowed to do that. And this data is coming from a device with the right certificate and the right credentials. Identity services will allow you to manage that. Then we have the device gateway. The device gateway will give you the connectivity. It will keep your connection alive. It will support different protocols like MQTT, which is a very common protocol for IoT, and other protocols like WebSockets, HTTP, security on top of that. And this is the connectivity part between your devices and the cloud. Then there is the message broker, and the message broker is reliable and fast communication across your IoT fleet. It will allow you to take and send those messages into the cloud, store them, split them into topics, topics are usually pieces of information that you can query later on. So if I have a smart home and I want to store information coming from my smart devices, I can have a topic tree that starts with home, then going to different rooms, like for example, living room, kitchen, bedroom, and inside those rooms to have the different devices. So in the kitchen, I'm going to have my oven and my fridge and my smoke alarm. And then I'm able to query each one of them. So for example, give me all the events that happened in the kitchen, will query all the devices in the kitchen, and then I can drill down and query for a specific device. Then after I took this message and stored it inside AWS IoT, I can start and applying rules on top of those messages by using the rule engine. So the rule engine will take those messages and will be able to do several things. It will be able to create rules, do something based on information coming from a message. It will be able to do some pre-processing before storing this information, for example. So in many cases, IoT networks can be really chatty and really noisy, and you don't need all of this information. So rule engine will be able to take only the information that you actually need and want to store, and store it for you. It can define different rules on different behaviors. So for example, there are some behaviors that you would like to take the data and just store it. And that's absolutely fine. In some cases, you would like to have a message going out immediately when a certain type of message arrived from the message broker. For example, if you have a sensor inside your factory and it monitors your temperature, so each time there is a new message coming from the sensor, you're going to store this information. But you can create a rule saying that if the temperature goes about a certain limit for more than 1 minute or for more than 5 messages, then trigger an alert that will send an SMS message to the factory manager saying that there is a problem in a specific section. And this is something you can play with those rules and create all kinds of rules. You're basically querying messages in a language very similar to SQL. So if you're familiar with SQL, start to defining those rules should not be a huge challenge. Next one is the device shadow, and the device shadow is a virtual representation of your devices in the cloud. And that will allow you to connect applications to your devices, and instead of talking directly with your devices, you are talking with the cloud in both ends. So your device is connected to this shadow, your application is connected to the same shadow, and when you want to change the state of the device, you are changing only the shadow, and the device will pull this information to apply the change and report back that it happened. So if I have a smart temperature sensor in this room, and it's set now for 25 degrees, and I want to change it to 23 because it's a bit hot in here, I'm going to go to my application, pick up my phone, set up to 23. This change will apply a change to the device shadow on AWS IoT. The device is querying this shadow constantly. It will get a new value saying that now it needs to go to 23. It will apply the change to the air conditioning system, report back that it was applied. My application will get a signal that it was done, and this is how you close the cycle, and this is how you connect your applications to your devices. Last but not least is the registry. And the registry is allow you to manage your devices. It allows you to store information regarding these devices. You can customize it. You can add your own fields. Basically create an online catalog of all the devices that are connected to AWS IoT and manage them in one single place. Another very important part of AWS IoT Core is the ability to connect your devices, if it's mobile devices or anything that can run code into AWS IoT. So we allow you with our mobile and devices SDKs to work simpler with the cloud. So you can abstract MQTT protocols. You don't need to create those MQTT messages. If you ever did it, it's not a big fun. So we have an abstraction layer for that. It has mobile platform support, so you can start developing mobile applications for your IoT solutions very fast, both for iOS and Android, of course. So any platform your customers, your employees are using is supported by that. Common language that a lot of developers know. You don't need to learn something new. JavaScript, Python, Java, some other languages that will allow you to start building your applications. Build your own. It's a code, so you can build whatever you want. There are no limitations. We're just making it easier for you. And of course, security this will implement the latest and greatest security protocols, TLS 1.2, to make sure that all the communication you're doing from your application to AWS IoT are fully secured. And of course, the other end is secured as well. So you have end-to-end security by using those devices. Another great example that I'm sure some of you are using, I personally have an iRobot Roomba back at home. And iRobot several years ago introduced a new model of Roomba that was the first connected Roomba. And think about it for a second. So this is a huge bet for a company that is focusing on hardware. So iRobot was a hardware vendor, and when they introduced the connected Roomba, it was the first time when they had to go and start building an IoT platform and becoming an IoT platform operator. And this is a huge challenge. And their system is basically allowing customers with their phone control this vacuum cleaner, tell him where to go, start it, stop it, and do some other things. And they thought how they can do it in the simplest way possible. And they used AWS IoT with some additional AWS services to create this platform. and this platform can process trillions of messages between billions of devices. It's a huge system that millions of customers all over the world are using on a daily basis. The great thing about it that they needed only 10 people to operate this entire IoT platform. And this is something that you can't do if you need to build all the parts of this system on your own, and this is something you should take into account. So we were talking about connectivity and control services. My next session is going to talk about device software and how can I implement AWS IoT at the edge and what I should take into account when doing that. And the third piece of AWS IoT is analytic services that allow you to take this data and take actions based on this data, analyze it, and eventually solve business problem. So a very important piece of AWS IoT, and then combining all of them together with the different features and the different tools we're providing. This is how the IoT solution looks like these days. So at this point, I think you're probably asking yourself, how do I get started? Well, I should get more information beside this session. I think this is a great start watching this session, but what's next? So there are a few things you can do straight after this session, actually after the next session, because it's going to be on IoT as well. First of all, you can go and look at AWS IoT solutions. We have a section in our website, you can find the link on this slide, that is talking about different solutions, and this is a great place to start because you can take a solution that we implemented, we built for customers as an example, and start applying it to your use case so you don't need to start from scratch. Another great resource is the AWS Partner Network, and we have many APN solution partners that will allow you to accelerate your time to value by using their knowledge, by using their expertise. We have hundreds of of partners from silicon vendors that create devices and chips for devices, to connectivity, to solutions, and each one of them is there to help you build, regardless your industry or use case. And this network is constantly growing, so make sure you're using those partners. And you can find some of these partners showcased in the partner directory zone of this event. So if you have some questions, you want to talk with some of our partners, make sure that you're going to the partner discovery zone to talk with some of these partners. Another great resource is the IoT training that is available on our website. You can go and take one of the more than 25 free IoT courses on analytics, device management, greengrass that we're going to discuss in the next session. And this is another great resource that will help you build your IoT knowledge and help you start this great journey. And of course, there are many other resources on our website, on the training website. So make sure you use these resources. So I hope you got the basic information about AWS IoT and how to start this digital transformation journey and making your industries ready for this new exciting era. I'm going to be back on the next session talking about IoT at the edge. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Bye.